this difficult behavior series, as I mentioned. Our objectives today are focused on discussing the differences in discipline versus punishment. We'll do that through exploring some parenting styles briefly, and then spend the most of our time talking through kind of older school styles in approaching discipline. So maybe the way that a lot of us were raised, the way our parents were raised, and maybe even some things that we're currently doing with our children. And then talking about what we would consider to be a new approach to discipline for children in general, and then specifically with our adopted children. And then I will cover just briefly at the end about discipline and what that can look like at some different ages. I want to start with a couple of disclaimers. This can be a challenging topic to present for a number of reasons. One, I'm doing a very broad overview today, right? We only have an hour, so I can't go deep into a lot of the concepts that I'm going to touch on today. That is a hope of mine, is to continue with this series to go a little bit deeper into some of these ideas and concepts. A lot of what we talk about today gets brought into a lot of other conversations that I have with families or in other webinar topics. Excuse me. But just know this is a general presentation, so I'm gonna hit a lot of things, and not everything is going to apply to you and your child. For most of you out there, I don't know you and I don't know your particular child. So please take in what applies to you and your situation, and then just leave what does not. Because there will be things I share today that don't really work for you. This is not a presentation that is meant to say everything I say today should be done with every child in every circumstance. So of course, use your own filter with that. Speaking of filters, you come today with your own values, your own history, and your own perspectives on parenting, and especially around discipline. So again, if I'm sharing things today that you feel like don't fully align with kind of your own values, your own perspective, filter through that. Take what applies to you, take what feels right to you, and then you can leave behind what doesn't. The last thing I want to do is invite you to join me today in openness and honesty. There may be some things that you realize you should be doing differently, some things that you've done with your children, you're currently doing with them, that you realize, hey, this is maybe not the most effective way for me to approach my child, and I need to change that. So being open, being honest with yourself, and then allowing grace. Okay, there is always grace for the things that we're doing with children. I'm a mother as well, and I can list off the many, many, many things that I do every day that I am sure are causing issues for my children, and they can talk about it in therapy when they're adults. And so with that, we want to just approach this with grace, right? We're all learning. We all come to parenting with our own histories that impact the way that we are parenting our children and how we're showing up for them in both really great ways and then in some challenging ways. So I want to offer, and you'll hear me say this throughout this, just approaching this with honesty and with grace for yourself. I want to start by offering some definitions. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see the first one. When I went to the internet to look up, okay, what would be the actual definition, right, according to whatever site I was on. And there was a couple of different definitions given for discipline, and I thought this actually illustrated really what I'm wanting to do today. So this first definition given is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment or to correct disobedience, or to correct disobedience. Then listed underneath that are some synonyms. So they gave, that the website giving me this definition gave, that I thought was really illuminating, right? So some synonyms to this definition of discipline was control, regulation, order, authority, rule, and strictness. So now the other definition I want to offer today was also listed on that site, was to train oneself to do something in a controlled and habitual way. And the synonyms were to train, to teach, to school, to coach, and to educate. And this is really what I hope we're able to do some today as we look at the ways we approach our children of discipline. Where are we focused more on control, authority, order, strictness, and we should shift to coaching and teaching and training and educating our children. A couple more definitions. Definition of punishment: the infliction or imposition of a penalty as retribution for an offense. Again, some synonyms: penalizing, retribution, damnation, and chastising, or what we're given under punishment. We're looking today at considering what consequences can look like. We want to set boundaries for our children. There need to be consequences when those boundaries are crossed, when those rules are broken. But these consequences are a result or an effect of an action or a condition. It's the outcome, the effect, the reaction to something that the child has done. So shifting our mindset from something more punitive that we would do with punishment that can be looked at like retribution, chastising the child, and moving to what are the natural consequences of this behavior, because that is a life value. It's a lesson that we have to learn all the way up into adulthood. There are consequences to the things that we do, both positive and negative. And so utilizing that life principle as a way to teach and coach and educate your child to become the adults you want them to become. So with that, just to really hone in on what I hope our goal here is today. And what our goal is, sorry, not today, but our goal in parenting is to raise good adults, right? We want to raise adults that are kind, that are smart, that are empathetic, and they're giving, they're contributing to society, they're respectful of others. We want to do that as parents with all the love and kindness and understanding that we can. And we, I know in our right and our peaceful minds, right, we don't want to control our children. We don't want to coerce or intimidate them. But sometimes because of what's going on with the child, because of what's going on inside us as parents, it can flip us into that place of seeking to control, seeking to intimidate, even when we don't intend to do that. We'll talk a little bit today about why that is. But just to kind of state that our goal is to just really be aware in each step of our parenting, especially our discipline, how we are forming and shaping these children as they become adults. The bigger picture is not just stopping the behavior that's in front of you, but the bigger picture is shaping and molding them into the adults that you hope they grow up to be. I want to touch very briefly on parenting styles. This is a kind of a classic model referenced a lot if you get into any kind of parenting training and books and things like that by a woman named Diana Baumrind. This was in the 1960s that she kind of created this grid of responsiveness. So kind of, you can also think about that as like connection and demandingness. You can also think about that kind of as structure. So the goal that we want to strive for in our parenting, and then also therefore our discipline, is we want to have high responsiveness, high connection, and high demandingness. So that authoritative box there, let's discuss this. You can see that in quotations. This has high expectations, clear standards. You're assertive in your parenting, but you're also flexible and warm and responsive to your child. When we lose that warmth and that flexibility and the responsiveness, that's where we can flip into authoritarian. That because I said so starts to come out of us, and that's where that control, that our own needs to really control the behavior of our children starts to take precedent over that warmth and that connection. And I know for you guys as parents that are working in attachment, maybe having struggles in that area, we can lean toward way more structure and less connection. So hoping to encourage you guys in kind of upping that connection today through some of these strategies. Okay, so looking at some of these old school styles, and we're going to try to break some of these down, kind of talk about not why they might, I don't want to label these as bad or wrong necessarily, but I do want to talk about them as ineffective. And what can be confusing about the effectiveness of these older school styles is in the moment, it can look effective. It stopped the behavior. What my child was doing, the tantrum they were throwing, the attitude they were giving me, the disrespect that they were throwing out, it stopped it. And so it worked. But we want to make sure is that we're looking at that bigger picture. And did we just focus on stopping that one behavior in that one moment by fear, intimidation, or control? Or are we really looking at what we're shaping our child to become as an adult and in the future? So using anger, yelling, screaming, anger happens. These kids push buttons we didn't even know that we had. It is hard. It is hard to be a parent. It is hard to stay fully patient and fully kind and fully gentle, right? All the gentle parenting that's out there. It's great. We want to do it, but it's really hard to stay in that lane and keep that going when your kid is doing the thing you have told them to do 1,000 times not to do, and here they are doing it again. And it happens. That anger comes out of us. And so wanting us to recognize as parents that then when that anger is striking and we are responding to our child, we are often being led by our own kids getting flipped into their brainstem, right? They go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Their logical brain goes offline and they are completely emotionally responsive to you. This can happen to us as parents as well, right? We are all humans. This happens for everybody. We get triggered into that emotional state. And so when you have a child and a parent that are just coming at each other emotionally and logic is gone, we can flip into styles of discipline that are not effective, that are not appropriate, that can even be harmful to the child. So wanting to really be aware of how your own dysregulation is coming out. You're overstimulated, you're tired, you're sick of telling your kid to stop doing something that you've told them so many times. And that older kind of style of if I can just yell louder than my kid, then that will get them to settle down, right? If I can escalate higher, if I can kind of get an edge up on top of them by getting a little bit bigger, a little bit louder, then that's going to settle them down. So again, it might be effective in the moment, but what we're creating and what we're leading with is fear and creating fear in the child. Did they only respond to you because they were afraid? Did they only respond to what you were finally telling them to do because they felt intimidated, right? So effective in the moment, but that's not a life value and a life skill we want to build in our children. Again, approach this with honesty and with grace, okay? So then punishment is kind of an older school style. Again, a lot of times these can be motivated out of fear and control. My child is behaving in a way and I need them to stop. I don't want them to do this. My own fear of if they continue to act this way, then what could happen? Then what kind of an adult are they going to be? How are they going to act with other people out in public? How are they going to treat teachers or their friends or other people if they continue to behave this way? I have to stop this behavior. I have to get this back in control, right? That is motivated often out of my own fear and my own feelings of being out of control. So that's where a lot of these punishments can come in. And often the message that can be communicated through that to the child, if we're using punishments, right? So you have done something wrong, so now this thing is going to happen to you. So what can happen is children get the message that I can do this as long as I don't get caught, right? Because we're only focused on stopping that behavior in that moment. The child misses the bigger picture of how do I also not behave this way in the next moment or in a similar circumstance where I can learn to apply the knowledge of what I've learned in this moment of discipline. That when we are, that when we're focused so much on that, then the kids can learn I can keep doing this as long as my parent doesn't catch me doing it. Often these punishments are completely unrelated to the behavior that the child is expressing, which is kind of what I talked about earlier with that difference between punishments and consequences. Children are going to learn so much better when there is a natural consequence to my behavior. I used this toy to harm my sibling. I threw it across the room. I broke a lamp. I did something. So now I don't get access to that toy anymore, right? That's the natural consequence there. Instead of I hurt my sibling with this toy and now I don't get screen time for 3 days, right? That those aren't, maybe if they use the iPad to hit their sibling, that's connected. But when it's not necessarily connected, then it's just okay, next time I just need to not get caught so that I don't lose my iPad. Instead of learning, hey, if I am hurtful to somebody else, I can't have those things, that I have to be kind with the things I am given. I have to be respectful of other people with the things that I am given. So there being that difference in the lesson that your child is learning. And so punishments can often just miss that mark a little bit, where we're so focused on anytime my child does something wrong, no matter what it is, then these are the 3 things that happen. They lose this privilege. They get a spanking. They get, they have to go to bed early or something, whatever that kind of the main things are that are the things you always go to instead of it being naturally connected. And we'll talk a little bit about natural consequences here in a moment. I do want to address spanking in this moment, kind of in this context, which again, this is kind of the disclaimers I brought up earlier, right? That there can be situations where spanking can be effective with our children. And often what I hear from families is I only use it with the most egregious behaviors, or they're doing something that is harmful to themselves or somebody else is like life-threatening and like the really big things. That's the only time I use it. But I also wonder, in reality, in practicality, is that really the only time it's being used? Especially when we get into situations with our kids that we just don't know what to do. They are being so disobedient, they're escalating so much, they're being aggressive, they're doing something that we are so paralyzed that I don't know how to handle this. I don't know, how am I supposed to address this behavior? What do I do? What's the natural consequence, right? All the exhausting things that run through our heads as parents. That when we feel that, what can happen is if we are feeling so desperate and we don't know what else to do, then we can resort directly to spanking, which may be effective, but often it isn't. It's not related to what's happening with the child. It can give some different messages. It can be used even in our anger, right? And we, in our right logical mind, we would never do that. But when we're triggered in our own fear, our own control, our emotions, and our desperation, what could actually happen, right? And so wanting for you guys to hear the challenge today to think about other types of discipline that could maybe be more effective for your child, especially in learning the bigger picture, right? Learning the lessons and what we want to shape them into in adulthood. That some of these types of punishments that I've talked about now don't always achieve that bigger goal. So threats. So again, this is kind of what I just talked about a moment ago about, you get desperate, right? I think you're out of ideas. The child is just going berserk. You don't know what to do. I don't know what to do this. So I'm just gonna throw these kind of threats out, right? So again, this is often fear-based, right? Our own fear, and then we're using kind of fear as a way to control the behavior and manage the behavior. And it's not good at teaching a child how they should be behaving, and it's focused only on the moment. That's why I kind of want to challenge against the use of these kinds of threats and recognizing when we're turning to threatening, even if it's not, threatening in like in an aggressive way from us as a parent, right? And I'm not threatening the child physically, but even just the threats of taking things away, or you can't do this if you don't do, if you keep doing this and you don't get this other thing over here. And we'll talk about that a little bit with bribery as well. But can often be a tool, or not a tool, but it can add to the fire of the control battle that might be starting, right? You're feeling a little bit desperate because your child is trying to grab control of what's happening, and then you have to try to grab control, and then you guys are in this tug of war control battle. And so if I can make a big enough threat, then it will stop my child. Then it will manage their behavior. If I can get that threat big enough to really get their attention. But what we miss in that is that we're already in a control battle with our child, and there are more effective ways of handling that control battle and getting out of that control battle to still get compliance from our child. Shaming. Shame is a useful emotion, right? When it is something that comes internally from within myself and it's mild, right? Shame stops me from behaving badly, right? It stops me from doing certain things in public or doing certain things to people. That can be a helpful emotion. Where it becomes unhelpful and it becomes pretty toxic, honestly, is when it is heaped on us by somebody else, especially if that's being used as a form of control. I am so upset by the behavior of my child, and I'm going to shame them. And I know we all know in our logical brain that we say you're not a bad child, it's the behavior that's bad, right? Like when we're in our logical brain, that's what can come out of our mouths. But when we're in our emotional state, is it becoming, why are you always like this? What's wrong with you? Why can't you be better? So for our adopted and fostered kids that are already very low in self-esteem, that just even those tiny comments of shaming is going to feel like a whole heap has been dumped on them. And it's actually going to result in more misbehavior, because the messaging that is received is, I'm so messed up. I can't do anything right. Why should I even try? Why should I try to be good? Why should I try to have good behavior? Why should I follow the rules if I'm just terrible anyway? So I'm just going to keep behaving however I want because it doesn't make a difference, right? So that's some of that messaging that can come through if we're utilizing shame. And so just being careful in honesty and in grace of little comments that have been used that are really actually pretty shameful, especially for our kids that are very prone to jumping into that shame spiral. It can, even the tiniest comment can feel like a whole load has been dumped on them. We have just a couple more here with the old school styles. Bribery, similar to what I was talking about with threats. Often this can come from our desperation. We're out of ideas. We don't know what to do, so we start to bribe. So sometimes this can be used more effectively, right? If you come into it prepared, right? And maybe we're using it as a way of positive reinforcement. Hey, when you do these things, when you clean up your room, you get ready for school, you do all this stuff, then you get this reward, right? That's not kind of the same. Where bribery is kind of in the moment, we're throwing out anything that might stick to try to stop this behavior. This could be if, you can get an ice cream if you'll just leave the park, right? Just stop swinging, quit throwing a fit. If you'll just leave the park, I'll get you all the ice cream in the world, right? We're going to throw all this stuff at them. So maybe a way to reframe that in a way that's a little bit more effective could be, hey, buddy, it's time for us to go so that we can go get a treat. It's a surprise. I'm going to get you guys a treat today. We're going to go get some ice cream. So we've got to leave the park or we can't get ice cream, right? So that little reframing teaches a better lesson to our kids, right? That just happened to be a surprise, that even though if you're throwing it on at the last minute, they don't know that. And what they're not hearing is, oh, if I throw a big enough fit, then I'll get a treat because my mom has to try to control my behavior. And so she or my dad are going to come up with these big cool things they're going to give me if I keep throwing a fit, right? So just that tiny reframing, or it works even better if you're really preparing for it ahead of time. So say, you've been having a really hard time getting up for school on time. If you can start getting up on time, then I'm going to set out a special treat for you to take with you for your lunch today, right? If you get up on time. But if you don't get up on time, then we don't get that special treat, right? So kind of better ways to utilize kind of what could be good in a type of bribery in a way that could be more effective. Okay, using demands as an old school style, that because I said so, right? And I know that it can be exhausting to explain everything, to give all the whys behind everything. And sometimes you just want to be like, just do it. Just do it. Like, quit asking why, please quit pushing back. Please stop hemming and hawing. Just do it. Because I said so. So easy for that to come out of us. I get it, that frustration and that peak that you can hit. But what this lacks is a listening and an understanding from you as a parent. It lacks the opportunity for you to have a discussion, for your child to really understand the things you're asking, right? So again, we're looking at building life values, right? Building them into good adults so that they understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. They understand why you're putting the rules on them that you're putting on them, why you're setting up certain boundaries. Take time to explain why. Listen to their pushback. You don't have to accept their pushback, right? So I'm not saying in any of this that we just go, okay, fine, if a kid pushes back, then I just do whatever they want to do. No, you can listen to their pushback and you can still say, hey, buddy, I hear you. Okay, and listen, I understand, but we still have to do it my way. We still have to do what I asked you to do. And this is why. But it also allows your child the opportunity to build the skills of negotiation, right? Which is a life skill. It's also a indication of secure attachment, when we know how to compromise ourselves and how to ask for other people to compromise so that we can have mutual needs met. So that gives them, and it teaches them how to do some of that negotiation. I will always listen to you. I won't always do what you're asking me to do, but I'll always listen. And so let me explain why you listen to me, and then you can give me pushback, and then we'll find a place of negotiation. Instead of just being a parent that demands and says, this is what we're doing, we're not talking about it, I'm not telling you why, right? Sometimes we just have to do it because we got to get out the car, we got to get in the car, we got to go. But if that's constantly something you're saying to your child, then being aware of what that's doing and how that's not the most effective way to really move them forward. Okay, last couple ones, lectures. Kids, tune these out immediately. It's just, you are wasting your time if you're going to go at them for probably more than about 30 seconds, depending on their age. A little bit older, they might, but even when you start, it just becomes the wah, 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 wah. They're just really not listening. So looking for ways to not jump into a lecture, but to focus on discussion. Kind of similar to what we just talked about, explaining why, hearing back from them, going back and forth, even when you do need to kind of give them a little bit of some reasons why some of their behavior and the things that they're doing are not right. It's not what you want for them. They're not acting respectfully and you need to talk to them about it. But refraining from that lecture, try to make it a discussion. Give them short phrases, short explanations. No, this is not what we do. This is what you need to do. To keep it as short as possible so that they actually stay tuned in. Those are some of those life value phrases. Let's do this with respect. Let's use your words. Some of these short little phrases that help teach them bigger skills for our life and for our values. And similarly with debates and arguments, the only purpose of a debate or an argument is to win, right? That is the only reason anyone enters into any one of these. Doesn't matter who you are, who you're having this debate or argument with. You are going back and forth because you truly believe in what you're saying and you need them to understand, right? And even if that doesn't mean you want to win, that's maybe not what's going through your brain, but that's essentially what you're trying to do. Trying to get them to understand my point, listen to me, change what you're doing. So if you're getting into that back and forth with your child, remember your child will often outlast you. They know how to push your buttons quicker and deeper than you know how to push theirs. And so you're not likely to win what you're trying to win in that moment. So making sure that if you see yourself falling into kind of debates and arguments back and forth with your child, how do you switch this to really be more of a discussion? How do you listen and understand? Modeling for them, asking them to listen and understand back with you. Okay, so some new discipline styles. And a lot of what I'm going to be covering today is really meant to be preventative, okay? That older school style of parenting is very responsive. It is, I wait until my child is misbehaving, until they've done something wrong, and then we address it and then we handle it. But this new discipline style that I'm putting out here for you guys today, which should be totally new, right? Some of these are concepts you've heard before, either through training with us or just in life in general. But this newer style of discipline is meant to be preventative, to stop the misbehavior from ever even occurring or happening. It's a lot of work on you as the parent, but that is parenting, right? We have been entrusted with these beautiful little lives, and a lot of these that are pretty damaged when they come to us. We are entrusted to shape them and to mold them and to model for them, to love them. And it is hard work, right? We always hear that parenting isn't easy. It really isn't. Being a kid isn't easy. And so kind of bringing in here to this first topic here, learning and teaching should always be your focus. You are their guide in a brand new world. They have never been 5 years old before. They have never been 13 years old before. You have, and I'm sure you don't remember every moment of 5 years old or even 13 years old, but you know how to guide and navigate them through. You have the tips as an adult that can look back and you know that, right? And this is why we're so desperate to control their behavior, right? Because we know what they're doing is wrong. We know it's not setting them up for success and we want that for them. But to remember the best ways for kids to really get that is to teach that to them, to guide them in that, not to force, coerce, and control that over them. I want to encourage you to think about your child's behavior as more innocent than it is intentional. It is very easy for us as parents to see everything they're doing as here they are being manipulative, here they are trying to triangulate, here they are lying again. Everything that they're doing is intentional. They are being disrespectful. They are disobeying me. It's a lot more innocent than we kind of realize. You might have a situation where your child is playing, okay, they're focused on something, they're doing some Lego, they're playing a video game, they're reading, they're doing something, and you say, hey guys, time for dinner, come on, let's go for dinner. And child does nothing. Child doesn't move, keeps doing their activity, doesn't even acknowledge you, right? So as the parent, then we go, they're being disrespectful, they're disobeying me. I said, come into dinner, right? So then we start to get a little worked up because they're being disrespectful again, right? So then you come at them, and maybe you're like, hey, I said dinner, put it down right now. You don't get to play with your Lego for the rest of the night because you didn't obey me, right? And that's what we're jumping into. Or if we flip perspectives over to what was going on with the child, perhaps they just legitimately didn't hear you because they were so focused in on what they were doing. Or maybe they kind of heard some noise. I know mom's talking, but I'm just trying to get this one piece right. And so they, in the way that our brains work, we can't focus on more than one thing at a time. So if we are completely focused in on this task, we are unable to process other things coming at us, right? And so your child's doing that. So maybe they weren't intentionally or ignoring you. They weren't trying to disobey you. They weren't blowing you off, but they just didn't hear, or they're thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this in like 5 seconds. I'm gonna get this piece on, and then your child has every intention to stand up and go to the dinner table. But that's not what it looks like from you and your perspective. And so if we can presume innocence, right, and come over to them, get down on a level, get their eye contact so we know they heard us. Hey, I need you to come for dinner. Dinner's ready right now. Your plate is on the table. I need you to come right now. And they say, oh, but mom, I'm doing this. I need to do the logo. You're like, hold on, like, what do you need to do? I just need to put this one piece on. How long is that going to take? It's just a second. Okay, then do it. And then come join us at the dinner table. Okay, mom, we'll do that. So maybe that's going to be the more effective way to reach them if we presume that innocence, and then they're not just trying to disobey and blow us off. Remembering that goal is teaching them to be raised into good adults. We want to respond quickly, addressing that misbehavior quickly and immediately, not putting it off till later. No more of the wait till your father gets home kind of old trope from many years ago. That you're addressing it right then in that moment. Maybe sometimes you do need to talk to your co-parent of like, okay, we really need to know how to address this, right? But you're addressing it in the moment. You can tell them, I'm gonna have to talk with mom, I'm gonna talk with dad later about this, and we're gonna come back and we'll talk to you a little bit more about it, but this is what we're doing right here in this moment. The TBRI ideal response, which I have some information on, I can always send you if you want it. It's probably something you've seen, especially if you've read The Connected Child or done any of the TBRI work. But its goal is focused on immediate and direct, aimed and focused on what is going on with the child and addressing that as immediately as you can. Encouraging playful responses, right? Assuming innocence over intention. So they're misbehaving, they're being disrespectful, and responding to them first as, whoa, okay, that was pretty disrespectful. Can you try that again? Right, keeping your tone as playful as you can often change that behavior much faster than if you come at them with a harsher tone immediately. And kind of accelerate that situation, right? To take the smallest little step up, not jumping way ahead of them and jumping to this intimidation. But if we can keep some playful responses, often our children will respond a lot better and respond a lot quicker. And all of that is really based on the way that we initially respond to them. Focus on what they should be doing. Okay, so really be mindful in your parenting, being honest, right? Do you say, don't do that more than you say, hey, I need you to do this? Ask your spouse, can you watch my interaction with the child? Do I say don't all the time? Or do you think I'm telling them what to do? Right, that older school model is so focused on what they did wrong and don't do that thing again, but we don't give them what they should do. I had my cousin's son had come over to my parents one time, and he was just running around the room, touching everything, touch. And I could just hear my cousin going, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that. And I'm kind of watching this interaction thinking, is this kid running around the room to find what he can touch? Like what he can be doing? Is that why he's touching everything? I think there was some other sensory and some other issues going on as well. But it was, I think, a good example of if my cousin had, instead of saying 50 things he can't touch, and said, hey, buddy, come over here and play with the toys we brought. Come over here, read this book, come play this game, come sit and do this video game on the phone that we brought. Then how could that have redirected over? And you wouldn't have seen my cousin getting more and more upset because he kept saying, don't. Okay, so thinking about what you're saying to them and how you're directing them to what they should be doing. That's why I love the concept of a redo in the TBRI principles. It is when the child does something incorrectly, right? They don't have that desired behavior. They said something disrespectful. They threw a tantrum. They're whatever it is they're doing, touching something they shouldn't be touching, right? Then we have them go, whoa, can you try that again with respect? Can you try that again the correct way? Can you try, oh, no, like my kid throws something on the floor, just throw some trash on the floor. Whoa, buddy, nope, try that again. Where does that go? Everything stops until you pick that trash up and put it where it needs to go. Great. So then the lesson that is learned is if I want to keep moving along on my way, I should just throw that in the trash where it belongs the first time instead of wasting time by throwing it on the floor and then mom has to stop and we got to pick it up and go put it in the trash and wasting all that time. Your kids start to learn how to do that the right way, right? So that's the bigger picture that we're trying to enforce. Utilizing choices and compromises, especially in your kiddos that are prone to control battles. This is a TBRI concept. We can get you some more information on some resources here at the end, but essentially it is tricking your child into thinking they have control, right? So you are giving them 2 or 3 choices. All of those are acceptable to you. They can choose any one of those, but they feel like they have a choice and they aren't just being told what to do all the time, that they have no agency, especially with your toddlers and your teenagers. And we'll hit this a little bit later. They are seeking independence. And so if you are constantly only telling them what to do and never giving them an opportunity to make their own choices, then they are going to push back as hard as they possibly can because they want to choose it. So make them think it's their choice by giving them choices. If they don't like either of those 2 choices and they push back, then you can say, oh, are you asking for a compromise? Do you want something different? What's your alternative, right? You don't have to take their alternative choice, especially if they give you something that's ridiculous, right? But you can go, buddy, no, that was too much. But how about this? Now you can offer another alternative that's maybe more similar to the choice that they offered back. Teaching them that skill of compromise and negotiation, which is a life skill. And makes them think that they have more choice than you're actually doing. And it can be as simple as the bedtime routine. Do you want to put on your PJs first or do you want to brush your teeth first, right? Instead of just telling them what they need to go and do, and then it results in a huge meltdown. So looking for ways that you can give them choices because it makes them think they are in control, and they actually are, right? They do get to choose what they want to do. They're in control, and that's going to take your child down. It's going to prevent them from starting to push back and from starting their meltdown just because it's only because they feel controlled, right? So we're taking that element away by giving them that choice from the beginning. Coming at them with really clear expectations. Again, this is preventative. If you're going into a situation where you know your child has a hard time, you know that a fight is waiting for you at the end of it, setting as many rules and boundaries as you can beforehand. Hey, before we go into Target today, right? Last time we were here, we had a big old problem because you wanted to get something that we couldn't get today. Can't do that today. This is what we are buying. If you want to give them some choices, hey, maybe there is something that they can get. You can get a little treat or you can get this, but we can't get a whole toy. Setting out those rules, and these are going to be the consequences, right? If you can't behave with me today and listen to the rules that I've put out, then you don't get to come back to Target with me next time, or something that's related to that. And then follow through with that. Okay, so if they do throw the meltdown, they break the rules that you've set beforehand, follow through with those consequences, right? So they start to learn that. Hopefully, those consequences are related to what happened. Or potentially you might need to lower the bar. So what that means is considering if you are asking too much of your child, right? So based on their development, based on their mental health, based on their current mood, right? Are you asking too much of them? So we want to lower that bar. So what this means, this can be something that is like tangible, right? If you're asking them to do tasks that maybe you ask them to do, take out the trash, but they really need you to break that down into all the different steps. You assume, especially based on their age, they can figure out how to get the trash out to the curb, right? But maybe they can't. Maybe they don't know exactly what to do. Maybe they're insecure. Maybe they feel like maybe they lack some confidence in getting all those things done. So we take that all the way back down to step 1. Hey, can you go get the trash can? Can you go get the trash cans out of all the bathrooms and bring them here to me? We're going to put them into this bag, right? So then they can be successful with a smaller task. Then when they're successful with that, we raise that bar back up, right? So it doesn't mean that we're always taking that bar back down and your child never has to rise up to the challenge. We're slowly stair-stepping our way back up to that bigger challenge. So that can be with tasks, that can even be emotional, right? If you want them to spend time with the family, right? Your expectation is you come into the living room on a Saturday evening and we all hang out, we watch a movie, we play games, we spend time as a family, we have a great family time together. And then 20 minutes in, your kid is starting to throw some misbehavior out there, trying to throw something, gets an attitude, does something to kind of disrupt the night, and then they get sent to their room. Perhaps you're asking too much of them emotionally. You're asking too much for them in connection. And then if they feel like they're constantly failing, they're constantly messing up, right? We get back into that cycle of, I can't do anything right, so why should I even try? Right? So then they're going to check out completely, stop wanting to hang out with the family, and this cascade of events has started to happen. When we can work that all the way back down to lowering the bar. Hey, we just want you to come in for 20 minutes, right? Or say, we're going to play this short game, we're going to watch this short show, or we're going to talk about this book, or do something here together for just a short activity. And then you can keep hanging out with us. We'd love for you to stay with us and keep hanging out. But if you want to go to your room and read a book or do what you want to do in your room, that's your choice. Okay, you can do what you want to do. But we want you at least here for this short amount of time. So then once they get too comfortable with that, then we can raise that up. Maybe we go to 30 minutes. Maybe we go to a bigger activity, a longer activity, working our way back up to where they're spending an entire Saturday evening with the family. But maybe you're asking for too much if your expectation is you can automatically just jump in and hang out with the family all night long. Okay, so in those moments when you've set rules before you're going in, you're clarifying expectations, and you need to do some follow through, but maybe you realize the task I asked for them to do was maybe more than they can handle, or maybe more than they can handle in this moment. I just need to lower that bar. I know my kid is extra tired. They were up all night. I know they had a bad night of sleep. So I need to lower the bar of my expectations for them the next day so that everyone can be successful, instead of keeping that bar at that highest standard. And then your child, because that sleepiness has taken over them and given them a little bit more of an edgy attitude, then it turns into disaster, right? Because we just didn't lower the bar. Okay, we want to keep the child near you. This is going to be in situations where they are more prone to act up. You know that this is happening. Remain present and attentive without becoming hypervigilant. And you don't want to nitpick and feel like they're just being watched like a hawk for the first time they do something wrong, and then you're jumping on them, you're critiquing what they're doing. So there's a difference there between being attentive and being hypervigilant. But perhaps you need to keep that child a lot more near you when you know you're in some social setting, you're out at church, you're out at a party, you're out at a park where you know your kid is more prone to act out and do things. Then maybe you can't go sit on the bench and watch them from afar at the park. You have to stay a little bit closer to them in a way that is playful and attentive, not hypervigilant. Practice with them. This works a lot. This works well with like younger children, that kind of practicing what desired behavior looks like, right? They may not have a clue what doing something with respect looks like. They may not have a clue on how to speak to you with respect. So you need to help them practice, right? And this is done best outside of the heat of the moment, with that goal being teaching them. Okay, as we start to wrap up here, want to talk a little bit about kind of ages and stages. Please, we need to critically think and filter through all of this, right, for how long the child has been in your home, right? So if you've adopted an older child, but they're still brand new to your family, then you might be treating them and needing to act and use some types of discipline that are a little bit better for younger kids, especially if your kid is developmentally delayed in any of these areas, socially, maturity, emotional regulation wise. If you know that they're 16, but they act like a 6-year-old, then the way that you need to respond to them is more like the way you would with a 6-year-old and not with a 16-year-old. I think that, the TV show years ago, Arrested Development, kind of brought some popularity maybe to that phrase. I don't know, maybe my millennial is showing with that statement, but this concept of arrested development, right? That when your child encountered trauma in their history and in their story, this can happen. They get stopped into that developmental stage and they don't really progress out of it. So that's why we have 16-year-olds that act like 3-year-olds. And it is baffling and it is frustrating and difficult for you as a parent. I get it, because you don't just have a toddler body, you've got a teenage-sized body and a teenage-sized vocabulary that's acting out of control like a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum. We can't treat them like you would your other 16-year-olds. We got to take it all the way back down to the way we would treat toddlers. So as I go through these stages, I want you to keep those things in mind, how long the child has been in your family, and kind of what their developmental level is when we're really talking about emotional and behavioral regulation. And then certainly if they have any special needs, any medical needs that would be impacting their ability to cognitively engage with you in the areas of discipline and boundary setting. So for infants and babies, the focus here, and even if you've adopted an older child, don't tune this out, okay? Again, because of that concept of arrested development, that your 16-year-old may not have gotten the attention that they should have gotten as a baby, and that's where all of this stems from. So we've got to take it all the way back to this stage, okay? So with our babies and our infants, we are being attentive, connected, and attached. Everything is focused on building this cycle of trust. So what that is when a baby has something wrong with them, okay, they have a need. The only thing they can do is cry. It's the only way they can alert. So they're going to start crying. And then with an attentive, attached caregiver, that caregiver figures out that that child has a need. They're hungry, they're tired, they're uncomfortable, they're bored and they don't want to be alone, whatever it is, they've got a dirty diaper. The parent figures that out, they meet that need, and then the baby is comforted, they are soothed, they come out of that crisis, and they're trusting, right? So they start to learn that when I cry, when my voice speaks out, somebody loves me enough and is caring enough for me and trusts me enough to hear my cry, meet my need, right? So that cycle of trust is built. That's how we have securely attached people, right? But we're not dealing with securely attached kids in most of these cases. So they didn't get that. They didn't have a voice, or their voice was ignored, or their voice was met with abuse and harm. So they don't trust you. So they don't speak those things out. They don't speak out their needs in ways that are easy to understand in immature and appropriate ways. They speak out in their behavior, right? So we have to learn to see beyond your child's behavior. Do not allow your child to distract you with their bad behavior because of the need they're actually covering up. And if you can get back down to that root and figure out what is it that made my child afraid, insecure, or feel out of control, that is how we're going to change behavior. That is how these discipline issues are going to start to come down, because we're getting at the root of what is causing them to feel afraid, insecure, out of control, because that is typically the root of all of this bad behavior for anybody. We do this as adults, right? You can all think of somebody who has thrown an adult tantrum. It's because they were afraid of something, they were insecure about something, or they felt out of control, right? Or we do it ourselves. The self-regulation cycle I also want to touch on because it plays into this later on. What we should be seeing in infants is they are completely regulated by their parent. When they are upset, when they need to eat, when they need to go to sleep, when they need to be comforted, they cry and the adult meets their need. They are regulated by their caregiver. Then when we move into toddler ages, that starts to become co-regulation. That's where we start to see, hey, buddy, you're pretty upset right now. I see you're very angry. Let's breathe. Can you breathe with me? What can we do to calm down, right? So this is where you're starting to interact with your child. As the parent, you're co-regulating with them. And then as children start to learn those concepts, right, they start to learn, hey, when I'm upset and my mom tells me I start to breathe, that actually helps me, right? And then as they get a little bit older, they start to self-regulate. I feel upset. I'm going to breathe to calm down, right? So that is that progression. So when you are adopting a 10-year-old, you're adopting a 13-year-old that didn't learn how to regulate as a baby because they didn't have somebody that was appropriately regulating them, then of course you're going to experience full meltdowns in a really big body. Okay, jumping into toddlers. Toddlers and teenagers are the worst. Okay, love them. They are beautiful in so many ways. They are also the hardest stages to parent because of a lot of different things that are going on with them developmentally and in their brain chemistry, in their bodies growing. Some of the fastest growth that their bodies are going to go through is in those toddler years and those teenage years. And what's happening rapidly in their brain. Their emotions get ahead of their ability to regulate it. And they're seeking independence, right? They think that they are bigger and can control things bigger than you. So this just makes these stages the hardest. So if you're listening to me today and that is the stage that you are in, hear the validation. You are in an incredibly hard stage, okay? Find some good accounts on social media that make you laugh about how hard it is, right? That helps me with my toddler. They have huge emotions. They're going to come out in that behavior. They do not know how to regulate themselves. So you're focused on regulating them and teaching them what to do when they're having these big meltdowns, right? If we just come at them punitively, especially at this little toddler age, where all they know is that when I feel upset about something that is happening to me, right, they are more innocent than intentional, right? They're just like, I just wanted the blue cup. I don't know why that was so hard, Mom. And they're having a whole meltdown because you tried to give them the green cup. It's a joke, but it is real. These kids really have these problems. And then they're upset about something, and then all they're being met with is punishment. Then they're not learning how to organize their world in appropriate and healthy ways. But when your focus can be on helping them calm down, hey, okay, I hear you wanted something different. I'm happy to get that for you, but I need you to calm down. I need you to use your good words with me. I need you to use your real words with me, not your crying. What do you want? Oh, you wanted the blue cup? Let's go get it together. Come on over here. And yes, it's a hassle that you got to dump the stuff out of a perfectly good cup into the next cup, and you got to wash the green cup. I get it. It is exhausting. But what your child is learning, right, in the bigger picture is that when I voice my needs, somebody hears me and they respond to me. We want to utilize natural consequences starting around this age. I gave the example earlier. If you hit your sibling with a toy, then we lose access to that toy. Do not take that toy away for days. The point of the lesson will be lost, right? All that matters is in that moment, they lost access to the thing they wanted to play with, right? You can take it away for an hour, you can take it away for 30 minutes. They will get the lesson, right? Just in that moment of it being gone. So don't go super extreme and taking it away for a really, really long time, because honestly, they're not going to remember. And it doesn't matter. Okay. So you can bring it back later that day. You can bring it back the next day, bring it back after nap time. Hey, buddy, I want to trust you with this again to not hurt your brother. So we're bringing the toy back. You need to be kind and not hurt people with our toys. School aged. Control battles are going to start to raise up even more. I mean, not even more, but you're going to see the most control battles, I really think, in kind of toddler and teenagers, but certainly happen still in the school aged, especially if they didn't get to work through a lot of that in a really good way in their toddler years, or because of our adopted kiddos, that a trauma and that even that in utero experience, right, can make their brains a little bit more sensitive to feeling out of control, flipping into fear, insecurity, and feeling out of control. And then that's where these big behaviors are going to come out. Want to offer lots of choices, lots of compromises still in this age, looking what is behind this behavior, right? So get those things in a memory. What are they afraid of? What are they insecure about? How do they feel out of control? Why do they feel out of control? And how can I give that back to them? Really getting discussions and understandings rolling during this time sets the stage for better conversations when they're teenagers. This is kind of the best stage to do that because they're a little more willing to still listen to you than until when they become teenagers. So laying that groundwork of I'm listening to you, trying to understand what you need. I want to hear your pushback. We may not always be able to do what you're pushing back with, but I want to listen and I want you to learn to listen to me. Still being able to utilize some redirection with some of their behaviors, some of the things that they're doing, and then still focusing on those natural consequences, right? What makes the most sense to teach the bigger lesson of what is going on with my child? Don't lose sight of the bigger picture because of the frustration of the moment. And I know it's really hard to do. I have a lot of compassion for you as you walk through this, especially with your really, really tough kiddos. Okay. But connecting those lessons, connecting those consequences is going to be the most effective way to teach them the bigger picture. Okay, teenagers. Teenagers are the worst. Toddlers and teenagers are the worst. We love them, but they are really challenging. So we want to look, watching for those control battles. They're going to rear up again, especially with teenagers. So being mindful of yourself, right? Whereas you as a parent are trying to seek control, how are you getting drawn into those control battles and how do you get back out? If you want, I'm hoping the control battle webinar got uploaded to YouTube last night. So if you do want that, please email me because I've got a lot more practical ways of kind of handling control battles, especially with teenagers. My biggest thing here is to be their safe space. If your child messes up, does a mistake, really breaks a big rule in a major way, and they are hiding that from you, I want to challenge you with honesty and with grace to wonder why. Why is my child hiding this from me? You want to be their safe space. As the parent, you should be the one that they should be able to come to and say, I really screwed up. Can you help me? Right? That is that concept of there might still be some consequences going on here, but I'm in it with you and we're going to work it out, whatever it is. So if your child's hiding those things from you, be curious as to why. Start to look at how am I engaging with my child and when they make mistakes? And have I created a situation where they're too afraid to come to me? Have I played a role in that? Or is this just their mistrust from their history and I have to work to overcome that past mistrust? And so how can I create an environment where they feel so safe to come to me, even if they have messed up, even if they have screwed up in a major way? How have I created a safe space for them to come and still talk to me about this? Relying on natural and logical consequences for what's going on with them. And I know that's a broad topic. We're going to hopefully dig into that a little bit more in future webinars. I'm also happy to meet with you and talk through this if you're really struggling with finding some logical consequences. And I have some good resources here that you can consider as well. Okay, so wrapping up here, we do just have a couple of minutes. I might go 1 or 2 minutes over. If you need to make a hard stop here because it's the end of your lunch hour, please jump off when you need to, but we're just going to go a couple of minutes over. So what can parents do? Understand child development. Most of you are not taught this in school, right? I'm a social worker. I was taught this. So I have a little bit more of a good understanding. I've been working in adoption for a long time. Most people don't have a typical understanding of child development. And why that matters is that with every fun and beautiful and new thing that your child is learning in whatever stage of development they are in, there is also a whole category of the challenges that inherently come along with that new stage. So if your child is behaving badly, it could be completely normal. That doesn't make it easier to handle. That doesn't excuse what they're doing, but hopefully that can validate that there isn't just something wrong with your child. There's something wrong with all toddlers and all teenagers. There's something in those developmental stages. So for you to be aware of that and understanding, just do a quick Google search. You know, what's typically happening with a 7-year-old, what's typically happening with a 10-year-old, and just see what the internet's giving you. And hopefully that validation can help take down your stress over the behavior of your child, because your stress is maybe what's elevating you, causing you to kind of respond in some ways you'd rather not respond when your child's misbehaving. You might need to adjust your expectations because of what you're learning. Hey, I am expecting this 10-year-old to do something that most 10-year-olds can't do. So I need to change my expectations. Or I'm expecting my 10-year-old, who emotionally is the level of a 3-year-old, to do things that a 10-year-old should be able to do, but they can't because they're a 3-year-old in that moment. So adjusting your expectations for your child. Doesn't mean we take away expectations, doesn't mean we still don't set boundaries and hold our kids to standards, but we might need to lower what those are and be mindful of that for yourself. This could be a little bit more about you than it is them, right? And the way that you are maybe being triggered, the way that your own fear and your need for control is kind of coming up in you with what's going on with your child. Take time to be self-reflective with honesty and with grace, right? To recognize, where am I responding in fear? Where am I responding in being out of control? How am I responding in fight, flight, or freeze when my child is in fight, flight, or freeze? Because your child needs you as the adult to be regulated, needs you as the adult to be the rational and mature guide in that moment. So if you know that this is causing you to just get really emotional and have these big responses that are more emotionally and fear driven than peace driven and logically driven, then look for ways to take care of yourself. How can you help work through the emotions that are getting brought up in you? Perhaps you need to see a therapist to help you process your own fears and your own desires for control. Perhaps you need to talk with a trusted friend, with your spouse, with someone in your church community that can be a support and a help to you. And I want to encourage you guys that it is possible to break the cycle, right? So if in our presentation today, you've realized some things that you maybe want to be doing differently, that in your logical brain, you know that's not what you're supposed to be doing, what you should be doing. But when you become emotional reactive, you don't do that. And there's still space to break that cycle, right? If you realize that with your child, you guys are in this loop of dysregulation onto each other, escalating each other, control battles all the time, that you can still break that cycle. And that can happen today, right? We can start to change your behavior, and therefore it will change your child's behavior. You can break that cycle. Just a reminder of these disclaimers. As I said, I don't specifically know you. I'm not telling everything I said today was not just for you and for your child. This was a broad overview, but something for you to consider and see where there might be some places that you can feel encouraged about what you're doing and some places for you to feel challenged to do something a little different. I'll kind of wrap up here with this resource page. My email's on here. We have a coaching program. Right now we have a grant that is covering the cost of that coaching program. It is 4 weeks of meeting with one of our staff coaches to tackle 1 to 2 big behavioral issues you're experiencing with your child, and try to get some strategies from the coach on here's what to do. So if you feel like you are out of ideas and you do not know how to handle, you're in that cycle with your kid and you do not know how to break it, and you want some help with that, we can get you in our coaching program to just give some practical guidance and strategies for addressing the behaviors that you're seeing with your child. Some books on the screen that are some of my favorites. where I pull a lot of my material, where I've learned a lot from. One I'll point out there at the bottom, The Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline. The No Drama Discipline book is wonderful. It's very practical for probably a lot of the things that you're experiencing with your child. That Whole Brain Child book really should be a precursor to it because it lays the foundation. So try to read both of them, not just jump to the drama discipline, because I know that's what you really want. Just tell me what to do with this child and how to handle their behavior. But that Whole Brain Child lays a lot of the foundation to understanding those principles. So I encourage you to look at both of those. Okay, thank you all so much for being with us today. Please reach out to me if you have follow-up questions or need some help in any way. Thank you so much.